Welcome to the Yoga Podcast, Keeping It Real, with your host, Claudia Azula Altucher.
Hey, it's me, Claudia. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I'm really grateful to all of you who've been giving me some amazing feedback. I wanted to give you a very quick intro to this special episode. I actually interviewed Kino in person, and that was the first time I did this because I've been doing ridiculous hours of waking up to interview people who are in Asia, like Japan, Bali, Australia, and then some other teachers are not so far, but it was never really, even though that's Skype face-to-face, sometimes you're able to do it. It was different to do it at the studio. And I was also in Miami, so I was practicing in the studio. And I thought there was something that was very interesting. We arrived about half an hour early, and opening the door, there was one of Kino's senior teachers. His name is Patrick Nolan. And he recognized me from prior times that I've practiced at the Miami Life Center, and we started to talk as a, sort of introduction. Kino was doing a final exam for some students on another room. So what I found curious that I wanted to share with you is the schedule that Patrick told me he had on that day. And I had it in a recording in my phone, but I apologize. I can't put it here because the quality is really bad, and I didn't want it to affect you. But he told me that on that day, he had woken up at 4 a.m. to walk his dog. And then he taught at 6 a.m. a Mysore class all the way to 8:30 a.m. Then he was going to practice his own practice. He does, I think, something third series, something really advanced. Then he was going to go then he was going to teach a lead class. So instead of Mysore, a lead class is where he actually does the count and all the students go at the same time. And then after that, he was going to drive to the other side of town to give a 1-hour private lesson. So I thought that was very eye-opening for all of us who are thinking, I would really like to be a yoga teacher, because I think it may put things in perspective a little. I couldn't believe the level of activity that Patrick had on that day. But anyways, we chit-chatted for a little bit, and then Kino finished her class and exams, and we started talking. And so here she is, Kino MacGregor. Okay. So, okay. So before we start, Kino, I just want to say that I'm a little jealous of you. Actually, not a little, but a lot. And it happened because I started reading Sacred Fire, which is a book that it feels very confidential. Like you tell a lot of little stories that are not in a proper, Ashtanga book. Yeah. And it felt like a fairy tale, like a really good fairy tale. So it's the good kind of envy, but at the same time, it's envy. So, but I want to introduce you to my listeners, although you don't quite need that much introduction. But Kino MacGregor is an international yoga teacher. She is the author of 2 books, The Power of Ashtanga Yoga and Sacred Fire, and you have another one coming up, which we'll talk about soon. She's also the producer of 6 Ashtanga Yoga DVDs. She's a co-founder of Miami Life Center, and the founder of the Miami Yoga magazine. Now, the amazing thing about her is her YouTube channel has almost 5 million views. Her Instagram account has 514,000 followers, and she has also almost 40,000 followers on Twitter. Amazing. Kino is one of the select group of people to receive the certification to teach Ashtanga Yoga by its founder, Sri K. Patavi Joyce of India. And she was, you received this before the age of 30, which is an amazing accomplishment. Welcome to the Yoga Podcast, Kino.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm very happy that you not only joined me, but you let me do it here in the Miami Life Center. You were just doing a final exam or something like that?
There was a course, an intensive course that we just wrapped up right before Christmas.
Okay, so that was the end of it, and that was very interesting. We have some sounds of that. So,
Nice.
So as I said before, I'm a little envious of you. Yoga came so easy in a way, and at the same time not so easy. You were very young. You were 19 or so?
I was 19 when I did my first yoga class, and it was not an Ashtanga Yoga class. It was a Shivananda class, more focused on relaxation and sort of a restorative view of how to use the postures. And I did my first Ashtanga Yoga class when I was 22 years old, and it was really then that I kind of committed to doing the practice more regularly.
Right, and you said in this book that I find fascinating, Sacred Fire, that you were looking for every kind of exercise before that. You had done Zumba and aerobics, all kinds of things. But something clicked for you in the yoga right away.
Right.
What would you say? What was it, do you think? Because you went to a class and the instructor even said to you, do what you can. Right?
My first Ashtanga Yoga class, the thing that really sort of resonated for me was that the practice answered a searching, sort of a latent searching that I'm not sure I was aware of sort of consciously. But when I did the practice, there was something that really settled inside of me, and it instinctively drew me back to keep practicing. And so that's really the first and probably most fundamental feeling to really go deeper into the yoga path.
And then at the age of 22, you find yourself in New York City, right?
Exactly,
And you were studying something in the university?
Yeah, I moved to New York City after some years of sort of, just partying and, kind of losing yourself in youth and fun and this sort of thing. And I moved to New York City to join a master's degree program from New York University. And I sort of thought, well, now I'm going to get my life back on track. That's sort of what I thought. And I thought that I would sort of go to graduate school and maybe get a PhD or get some internships and sort of get a real job and that sort of thing. But when I moved to New York, what actually happened is that I joined the traditional Mysore style class. And that for me really solidified my connection to daily practice. I never thought that I would do yoga every day. It's not something that I'm going to do yoga every day.
I don't think anyone thinks that.
No, I mean, some people are sort of all or nothing. Like some people who are like fitness oriented people, or they go to the gym every day or something like that. I never had any physical discipline before yoga, so it was never really like, I didn't have a daily fitness regimen or routine, not when I was growing up or really anything. I would, work out randomly or something like that. So when I moved to New York and I joined the Mysore style class, the teacher, he said to me, this class meets 6 days a week, you can come at 8. And there was no sort of option to come 3 days a week or drop in or something like that. It was just sort of like, you're here every day or you don't do it. So I came every day, and after my first week, I could barely lift my arms, and after about a month, I had changed my sleep cycle, and after 3 months, I wanted to change the way that I was eating. It just changed everything about my life, because now I had this thing I did every day in the morning, and it required me to make different lifestyle decisions and different lifestyle choices. And very quickly after that first class, I got the inspiration to actually go to India, to go to Mysore. So actually sort of got that inspiration, and I followed that dream really all the way to Mysore, to India, where I met Guruji, I met Sri Kipatadi Joyce.
But before that, I even want to point out the teacher that said to you, this meets 6 times a week. He's just no ordinary teacher either, right?
Right, no, this was Govinda. His name was Russell at the time, so Govinda Kai. And
he's an amazing teacher.
He's really awesome.
Like you are.
He's really, really awesome. Yeah, for sure.
So it's amazing. And you said he directed you to some books on, you had some struggles with food, like I think every woman in the planet, I know I do. Yeah. He directed you to some books on eating, one called Conscious Eating. Was it?
For sure. I remember after I'd been practicing, for maybe a couple of months, I remember looking at what I brought for lunch for my internship, and it was just this sort of hodgepodge of things. And I remember that like dessert was Mentos, and I thought, this doesn't really seem so healthy. And I kind of read the ingredients, and I was like, what are even the ingredients in this? It's like sugar and red number 5 and blue number 2 and yellow number 20. And I thought, that doesn't really seem really good for me. And I went to my yoga teacher and I said, what recommendations do you have for how to eat in accordance with a yoga lifestyle? And he said, well, you could try to read this book called Conscious Eating. So I read that book, and it really changed the way that I thought about things. And one of the most important takeaways from Conscious Eating was Gabriel Cousens. He sort of did this research. He cited this statistic where he said that if we took all of the grain that feeds the livestock for all of the animals that are raised for meat production and consumption, and we took that grain and we fed that to people, then world hunger would end today.
Wow.
So if we just simply redistributed that grain, then all of the people who are starving in underdeveloped countries and all of the people who are homeless and starving in our own countries, we would be able to feed them all. And I just really thought there's no moral and ethical argumentation for, eating meat on even on that level. I care about the environment, and I care about sort of doing the right thing morally and ethically. And so pretty much after I read that paragraph, I pretty much woke up the next day and made the choice to be vegetarian.
Wow. Radically, just like that. And you haven't gone back to eating meat ever. Wow. And you're fine. You never miss the protein or you do some pretty intense yoga moves.
Yeah. I don't miss the protein. I make a concerted effort to eat the vegetarian sources of protein. And if I'm feeling really depleted, like if I'm doing a lot of asana and I'm doing a lot of teaching, I make sure to maybe take a protein shake or something like that that's going to help create sort of like a balanced approach to nutrition. In the beginning, I really wasn't into that. I just kind of stopped eating meat and just kind of ate whatever for a little while. But there's a lot of argumentation about which is a more sort of health related issue, and I really think that's a personal decision that you need to figure out between you and your nutritionist or your doctor or something like that, based on every individual's health needs. Because some people have serious health concerns that maybe they need to eat a particular food or even a particular meat in order to sort of save their life, which is completely acceptable. But I don't have anything like that. Right. I feel really good eating the vegetarian diet. I tried to do the extreme version where I was vegan for a while, and I tried to be raw vegan for a while, and that was really extreme, and I did not feel so healthy.
It's hard.
Yeah, and it was really difficult, and I really felt a little too restrictive. It felt a little bit almost like an addiction on some level for me. Other people do it and they don't feel like that, but I did. And so you asked me if I ever miss the protein. I don't miss protein. I haven't eaten meat for so long that even when I see it, it kind of if I start to think about it, and it makes me physically uncomfortable when I think about sort of what that was and where it came from. That was a being and it had a life, and then now it's sitting there. Cooked, like your thigh muscle was once attached to you, and then it would be cooked and served to someone. It kind of trips me out. But what I do miss is, and this is going to sound completely random, what I do miss sometimes is the fun experience of it. The community experience of not having to be oh, do you have a vegetarian option, or do you have this, or you walk by and you on the 4th of July in the United States and you smell barbecue, barbecue vegetables also smell good, but when you smell barbecue meat and that sort of thing, none of those smells bother me. But there's a community aspect that I think slowly is starting to shift. But 15 years ago when I kind of made that choice, or 14 years ago when I made that choice, it was really sort of like a flag in the North Pole, sort of staking out new territory.
Wow.
And it just feels more. There's more options, and you're sort of less ostracized for making those choices now than maybe before.
Back then. Yes.
Yeah.
And so is it true then when you got to India for the first time, I believe you were 22 or something, 23, you had no hair?
Yeah. So one of the things that I did in my first year of practice is when I was practicing, it seemed like this was the first time that I really began to question all of the choices that I'd made up until then. Before yoga, again, I had no physical discipline. I was either an academic, or when I wasn't studying, I was intensively partying. So I sort of had this party on the weekends, study during the week, and somehow I'll manage to balance itself out.
Typical New Yorker.
Yeah, typical Miami Beach too.
Oh, Miami Beach. Right?
Miami Beach, maybe you only have the party, maybe you don't actually have the study in the Miami Beach. So yeah, it's maybe more typical East Coast, yeah, something like that. So what I did was slowly I realized so I was looking at my clothes, and I thought, well, who am I when I wear these clothes? Is this me, or am I trying to put on, am I trying to be the party girl? Am I trying to be the studious girl? Or am I trying to be this girl or that girl? So I gave away almost all my clothes. And then I used to have so many different colors of hair. I used to have blue hair and red hair, and then I had orange hair and strawberry colored hair. I just had all these crazy colors. I used to wear wigs, and then cut it and grow it and cut it in weird ways and all this kind of strange things. And then I don't know, I was sitting there in New York after I practiced for a little bit, and I just kind of got fed up with just
the whole thing.
Yeah, all these. I just thought, well, what is this? And I get a haircut and then think, oh, it should be like this, it should be like that. And then the other thing is that you sweat so much in the Ashtanga practice. So I got so tired of every day, here I was fussing with my hair, and I thought, I need to get rid of it. It's gone. I'm throw it out, I'll throw my clothes. So I went there, just cut it off, just shave it, get rid of it.
But that was also kind of like the attitude in which you landed. You were like, I don't believe in anything. Don't tell me there's a guru or anything like that. I don't buy anything. I'm questioning everything. But you say you arrived at the shala and you sort of melted.
Yeah, exactly. So part of my graduate degree was in feminist studies. So there's this whole notion of sort of creating the equalization of gender roles and not sort of simply surrendering based on a pre-existing hierarchy, something like that. So I question the notion of needing to bow down to a guru. I question the notion of needing for a woman particularly to bow down to a man, and whether that was sort of, an entrenched, patriarchal system that was merely being imposed on, female yoga practitioners. So I was sitting there, and for almost like the 48 hours, or 2 days before I met Guruji, all I thought about, I was like this little hot mess about I'm not going to bow down to him. This is a really outdated custom, and it has to do with the Indian patriarchal assumptions about female subjugation and the role of women in history, and I'm not going to do that. And I remember I would talk to people, and they would be like, oh, okay, well, so don't do it. You don't have to do it. And I was like, right, I'm not going to do it. And I was like, I'm going to take that stance. I'm not going to do it. And then when I got to India, I got dropped off. The taxi dropped me off at the Guruji's shala, right?
And this is something that used to happen. I don't think it ever happens anymore. Now there is hundreds and hundreds. But you were dropped there at the door, all students.
Exactly. I was dropped there. My luggage hadn't arrived, so I literally had nothing. I had this weird backpack that I, very intelligently didn't pack anything in, except for bug spray. So I arrived there with my backpack and my bug spray, and I, walked up to the practice room, and there was maybe 2 people practicing at that time, and Guruji was standing there, and I remember I looked into his eyes, and before I could question, it's like my heart sort of cracked open for him. So my hands were on his feet, really, before I could intellectually question and intellectually sort of, pose all of these very sort of thought out and rational questions about.
And I find that very visceral because I like when those things happen. You have kind of a recognition of something that's happening that has to do with your life. You mentioned you had a dream also before you went where you saw him, I think.
Yeah.
So it was kind of marks along your path that yes, you're on the right path or something like that.
For sure.
And so there you did your first year, and this is one of those where it sounds like a fairy tale, and I know it's not. I know it wasn't easy, but it sounds sometimes, and the way you write this book is also very beautiful, very poetic, kind of like a novel. So you get all the feelings. But on the second trip to India, you went in trying to love yourself. You said it was your intention. Yeah. And you ended up finding something else.
Yeah.
What did you find?
Well, I met my husband on my second trip to India, which was really interesting because I had just sort of gotten out of one relationship, and what was really clear was that I had sort of spent so many times in my life not really derailing my life, but sort of chasing love, chasing love through relationships rather than sort of chasing love into the inner experience and sort of trying to fill myself up from the inside. So that was my intention on my second trip to India. Actually, I saved enough money to buy an around-the-world plane ticket, and I made all these sort of destinations and stops that I wanted to go to that were all sort of me and my own journey,
including Iraq.
I flew through Kuwait is what happened. Yeah, I flew through Kuwait. Yeah, and it was right after the Iraq War, and there were so many people that it was a really cheap ticket, is what it was.
I
can imagine.
So it wasn't the thing about I'm gonna go see the war zone. It was more of a cheap ticket.
It was just a flyover. It was a transit connection. That's all. I wanted to go to I wanted to go to Nepal, and I did go to Nepal, but no, I didn't. I didn't think I was prepared to go to the Middle East by myself at that time.
Yeah.
But I did at the layover in Kuwait City when we transferred. So I landed from New York, and I was the only Western woman in the entire airport at the time, and I was a little intimidated by that.
Wow.
I thought, wow, this is kind of intense, And I had short hair because my hair had been shaved, and it was that long, so it grew out that much from the last time I shaved it. And I was like
an inch.
Yeah, exactly. I was I'll just let it go. So who knows if they thought I was a lost boy? Who really knows, And I remember that I got on the plane, and when I got on the plane, I looked around the plane. And the stewardess was really nice. They moved me to a place where I could lie down. I thought I was the only Western woman on the plane, and they told me move. Probably girl is probably what they thought. I'm sure I looked real young, you know, like let's take care of her. And then I got up to her in the bathroom and I looked and I saw there's another Westerner on the airplane.
Hi,
and I felt like, oh, maybe I talk with him, you know, because we're gonna land in India and there's all, you know, Indians and Middle Eastern people, and I thought, wow, I don't really like know. This was a new place in India that I hadn't been to. I was landing in Trivandrum, which is in Kerala, and I hadn't been there, and I just thought, well, it'd be nice to just talk with someone, you know. But he was talking to the person who sat next to him for the whole trip. So I thought, oh, he's probably not the yoga person. He's probably like a businessman because he's talking to this guy the whole trip. And finally, and the whole trip I couldn't catch his attention, and neither going through customs or anything like that. And then finally when I walked into the baggage carousel, he was coming out, and I looked at him and I said, hey, are you doing that yoga thing? And then he looked at me and he said, yeah. And I said, do you want to share a taxi? And I was like, sure. You know, and so we started.
You just went for it.
We started talking. I wasn't thinking like let's start a relationship. I was really thinking like, hey, it'd be cool to like just share a taxi with someone to figure out, you know, where
but you were
this place
feeling
is.
some kind of a.
Not really.
He's a cute guy. You have to admit.
Not until we got. He's definitely a really attractive guy. I definitely agree. But it didn't register for me until we got into the taxi together.
Wow.
When we got into the taxi together, I actually felt it in my body. I felt like a visceral response in my body. Like, ooh, I liked it. Like there was a charge. there was a charge. So it was less of like there was less of this kind of like, ooh, he's attractive, let me go try to be with him. It was really, I sort of introduced myself from the perspective of like fellow traveler, and then only when we were actually physically close, then there was this kind of charge. And what was kind of funny is that after that, I don't know, we were like friends and talking and this sort of thing, and I, you know, I made all of these sort of, in my world, these kind of open signals to him to let him know that I was kind of interested. And for him, he came from this perspective of if you really like someone, you really take it slow. And so what that meant for me was for the first like week, in India, a week feels like a month. Yes. You know, it's like, because
there's nothing to do.
Yeah, you just sit there and stare at the wall, you know? And then if you're not staring at the wall, you're wondering about, you know, what other people staring at the wall are doing. So I would occasionally leave my position staring at the wall to go knock on his door, you know? So I did that a couple of times, and he didn't do anything, you know? And at some moment, like, he kissed me on the cheek, and then I talked to him after, right? And he was trying to be respectful, but I remember thinking, like, he must be gay. I mean, you know, because I sort of went there and like sat on his bed and like nothing happened. No, and he was like, "Oh, you want to meet for coffee later?" And it's like, "Oh, okay." Not really what I was thinking, but sure, coffee later. And it took like a really long time, and I kind of gave up, and I thought he must, you know, either he's not interested or maybe he's gay or something like that. And I thought, well, okay. Just leave it at that. But then finally it did. It did.
And through emails later on, like it took a very long time. You took it really
to become a relationship for sure.
Do you think that helped the relationship? You know?
Well, I mean, I would say that one of the things that's interesting about like long distance relationships is that I think it's both good and bad, because what happened is neither of us wanted a relationship. You know, I was on this sort of personal journey, and my husband Tim, he had just gotten out of a marriage, so he was just recently divorced, and he didn't want a new relationship. And he had just been divorced from someone from Venezuela, and he felt like, I don't want another one of you people from the south that's gonna hate my country in the north. You know, he's like, I know it
makes total sense.
Yeah, and I had just been in a relationship with someone from Canada, and I thought, no, I don't need another northerner who's gonna blow up if they come visit me in Miami from the heat. And I thought, no. But anyhow, so we were both like, no, we can have, you know, 1 month of you know, of sort of like a romance in India, and then we both meant to sort of leave it, and then we couldn't. We kept on emailing. What was interesting about email was that
it was new for starters.
Yeah, it was new, and it was for him. It was easier because he could, like, you know, he had the computer and the internet connection. But for me, it was like I had no. There was India without internet.
There was nothing.
There was no mobile internet. There were these internet cafes with these sort of large tanks of computers. You know, and it had this round thing at the front. And I remember, that there was one dial-up connection for all of the all of the computers in the internet cafe. So what would happen is you would, you know, I remember bring a book every time, and I would put, you know, mail.yahoo.com. So I finally figured out that you didn't have to put yahoo.com, mail.yahoo.com, open up to your login page. Then I would, as I clicked that, then I would read 3 pages of the book. I would look up, oh, it's loaded. Then I put my login.
Wow.
Read 3 more pages. I'm also a fast reader, so I would read, and then, oh, okay, oh, it's open, fantastic. Then I would start writing, look and see if there was an email. And then this happened the first time after I was writing this very intensive email, was a power cut. I lost my email. It was terrible, and I thought I almost started to cry because I'd poured my heart and soul into these emails, you know. And then I learned a trick, which was that you have to open a Word document and simultaneously write your email, saving it each minute, so that if there's a power cut, you can always return to that computer. And so this is the techniques that I had to go through.
Oh my God, unbelievable. Thank God for these times right now.
It's completely different. And people say ooh, I'm afraid to go to Mysore. And I think, what are you afraid of?
Now it's like nothing.
It's fine.
It's totally, and you can have it in your bedroom.
It's fine.
So in this second trip that you were there, you learned all of the second series right there. So it was kind of like one of those, it was a different time. I'm not sure this happens that often right now for what I hear.
Yeah, I'm not sure it happens that often, pretty much ever. It was really this crazy thing. I didn't really, it wasn't really happening to that often, you know.
Back then?
No.
Right, yeah. And then, but you also found that you had a pull for the other aspects as well. I mean, you found love, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting that you found love when you were looking to love yourself.
Exactly.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
But then you also found there was something more that you wanted out of yoga. You love the asana, and you clearly had a talent for it, but you started exploring vipassana.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And there were two discoveries that I found very, very eye-opening that you mentioned. You had one during a tremendous summer and one during another vipassana. But the one I remember has to do with something in your leg.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you tell us what you found? Because I related to that very much.
Well, as a little girl growing up, one of the things that I remember, maybe my first memory about body image, was being self-conscious about the shape of my legs. Because, you know, I remember someone making a comment about, you know, oh, you're putting on a little weight down there, you don't want to get thunder thighs or something like that, or you don't want your legs to be like big tree stumps or something like that, or watch out, you're going to get cottage cheese thighs when you're older, and this sort of thing.
Ow!
And, you know, I remember hearing these things from you know, either just people around, you know, whether it was someone.
People mean no harm, but they think so.
Exactly.
Yeah,
or you know, someone's older sister saying something like that, and it's just sticks inside of you, or someone's mom to all of the little girls that are there complaining about what we're eating, saying that we have to watch what we eat. So trying to, in many ways, be helpful, trying to create, you know, the inspiration to live healthfully, and then instead, that was my takeaway. It wasn't ooh, I should try to eat salad. I was ooh, my thighs are fat. So, you know, and then what happened for me was also because of, I would say, a conflicted relationship with my body in many other ways. Sort of my legs and the area sort of around from my hips, so from my belly button down to around the middle of my thighs, was sort of the reservoir for every ounce of self-hatred and self-denigrating thoughts.
I'm exactly the same thing, and I can bet that a big percentage of the people listening probably have this issue.
Something like that.
Because it's impossible to lead up to advertising and Photoshop and things like that.
Yeah, the reshaping of the body. You know? I mean, I remember doing that as a little girl, standing in front of the mirror and holding my thighs from the back and being ooh, it would be so nice. It was just like that. If I could just shave off this or shave off that.
I do that now. I hear you. I know it's painful. Totally. But you find noticing it during the
well, sort of what happened for me was that I wasn't even aware that this was happening. I wasn't aware that the body could actually store these thoughts and memories. All I knew is that when I started in my yoga practice, I couldn't feel my hip joints. I just couldn't feel them. People would talk about oh, you want to open your hips or externally rotate or internally rotate, and I would kind of put my legs in the movement. So even though I could put my leg behind my head at this point, I couldn't feel what was going on in my hip joint. So when I went to Vipassana, there's a moment in Vipassana where you're asked to feel your body from the inside out. So when I got to the area of my hips, as soon as I put my attention there, I felt all of the self-directed negative thoughts that I'd ever thought. I felt them, and I didn't think them, but I felt them. So I felt oh, I hate my body, I hate my legs, my fat thighs, the thunder thighs. I felt all of that, and it was just sitting there, and it sat there like a band, it just kind of sat there. And as I felt them, it's each one of those thoughts, and each time that I thought that, it had sort of taken residence there, and it had blocked my feeling of my body, and it had blocked my my life energy there. And as soon as I started to feel it, I just noticed these tears just starting to roll down, roll from my eyes. And I didn't really know what to do with it. And the instruction in Vipassana is remain equanimous. Don't do anything for, don't do anything against. So if you're feeling this intense emotions, don't play it up, but don't try to suppress it. Just observe it. So if you have tears, be aware of the tears. If there are thoughts that are rising, be aware of the thoughts. Return to the technique. So that's what I did. It was really powerful because for the first time in my life, I was not subject to the experience of my emotions. So the emotions weren't driving my my train of awareness. I was driving the train of awareness, even though intense emotionality was there. The second thing was that I, for the first time, felt a part of my body that was previously just a big black area. I didn't feel it. It was like a black hole, really. And I remember feeling, it took me almost 2 hours just to move my attention from the belly button down to the middle of the thighs.
Wow.
And it was really, it was almost like a lifetime of emotions that were there, and just like this intensive kind of self-hatred that was there. And I just sat there with it and experienced it. And you know, the teaching, Vipassana is the same teaching in Ashtanga Yoga. If you remain equanimous and you walk the middle path, sooner or later, you will become balanced. And you will embody that balance simply by not generating future attachments or future aversions. So in doing that, just feeling what I felt in the pure light of awareness, there was a shift. I wasn't aware of it at the time. So the next time I was directed to go through the body, I got really afraid because I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go into that darkness again. And I'm gonna cry for another 2 hours. What was amazing was the next time that I went there, it just wasn't there.
Really?
You know? And I just thought like, wow, it's just not there. And I thought, well, what's there? And then there were just, sensation. And it was just neutral sensation. It was just, there's a tingling sensation.
So there wasn't all the judging and all of the...
It's gone.
And would you say, two things on that is that, would you say nowadays you don't feel hatred toward parts of your body? Have you made peace with it?
I think now I'm comfortable in my own skin,
That's great.
It doesn't mean that I don't wake up one day and I feel a little fat or something like that. I feel, I'm a little bloated, I'm out of shape, something like that.
Oh, it wasn't just me?
Yeah. But it doesn't have this quality of like self-judgment or self-worth, So it's there's a feeling of comfort inside of my own skin that also creates an identity that's not tied to the physical form.
I see.
So and again, it's not like now every day I wake up and I feel like, oh, everything is amazing. No, I wake up and then I experience my body for what it is, but I guess I'm not as identified to the results of the physical body as I was before, and in many ways that set me free by locating my sense of identity at a place that's really beyond the physical incarnation.
Right. And the other question I wanted to ask you about that is the next time you went onto the yoga mats and you said you were not aware of your hips, for example.
Yeah.
And during Vipassana, you're not allowed to do yoga, although when I do it, I strike a pose or two in the morning when no one's looking. But did you feel any difference? Did all of this sitting and observing, did it help you in the opening of the body?
For sure. I think there's two things. First of all, if seated meditation, long periods of seated meditation, I think is the fastest way to open your hips. Because you just sit there and the hips open and open and open, and you just sit there and gravity wins over 10 days, So this, I think, is just a really good function. Anybody that wants to have open hips, I think, should develop a seated meditation practice of minimum 10 minutes per day.
Right.
Do that every day, not sitting against the wall, not lying down, just seated upright. Sooner or later, your hips are going to open.
Right.
You're going to train the core muscles that will support your spine, which will then help the hip flexors release. This is a purely anatomical function of a seated practice, which is great for that. The second thing was that it took a really long time, even after Vipassana, for me to feel my hips. I became aware of subtle sensations, like the pulsing, the feeling of skin, this sort of thing, which was all new. But it took almost a year for me to actually feel the hip joints.
Wow.
So even after that, and one of the ways that you feel a part of the body for the first time is pain. And I remember feeling, people would talk about their hips being tight and this sort of thing, and I would feel like, well, my hips stopped there, but I feel nothing. And I remember working into a posture in second series of both legs behind the head, Yoga Nidrasana. And I remember working, trying to get deeper in that, and I had this feeling, of the inside of the hip joint, of the in the balance socket of the hip joint, that the head of the femur was rotating around, and then I felt the muscles around the head of the femur almost like stop it, and then I felt like a pulling and a stretching around there, and I thought like, wow, that's so exciting.
I found my hip muscles.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
And they were tight, and it hurt. I was more excited, like, oh, that sensation. Oh, that's what it feels like. Oh, that's what's supposed to happen. Oh, I get it, And so some days, and now I have some days where my hips feel really tight, which I never had before, which I sort of enjoy, because I think, wow, that's amazing. It's like, I feel it. and they would be stuck in some places before with no sensation.
Right. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so this kind of happened during your first couple of trips. Eventually, you and Tim decided to get together, and you were having some trouble with the cold weather where he was living.
For sure.
That's I mean, there was an image of you in a bathtub feeling
freezing. See, they have this thing that I've learned. Now Tim and I, we've been together almost 11 years now, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And almost every summer we go to Europe, and he's Tim's from Scandinavia, he's from Denmark. So they have this thing in Scandinavia which I've learned, which I didn't know because we do not have that here in Miami, which is called a bad summer. And what that means is if you have a bad summer in Scandinavia, that sort of means that the sun doesn't really come out. So that can remain like 60 degrees and raining the entire summer. And so we had one of these bad summers. And all the Scandinavians are so strong, they just shrug it off like, it's a bad summer, let's go to Spain for a week. And I was in tears. I had like seasonal affected mood disorder. I was like, there's no sun. And I was crying. And I could never get warm, and I would try to ride the bicycle really hard just to get warm. I was taking like 5 showers a day because they didn't turn the heat on because no one else was cold except the girl from Florida. So and I remember I was also teaching. I remember Ireland also. I was teaching in Ireland, and they had the same bad summer. And I remember sitting there, and there was I had tried to turn the heat in the apartment maximum, and I was still cold. And I went out to, the supermarket and come back, and I was shivering, and I turned the bath on, and I put it like maximum, only hot water, and tried to let it fill up, and I was sitting there watching it and putting my hands over the steam and shivering, and I just really had this image like, why am I here? Why have I done this? Why am I not in Florida? And I got on the computer and I put like weather.com, and I put, Miami Beach, Florida, 33139, like the zip code, and then it said like, 87 degrees and sunny, and I was thinking like, what am I doing? I have to go home. I want to go home.
Thank God he agreed actually, because I think things were happening in his life too, and he decided to come here. That must have felt like such a blessing that he followed you, and then you the teaching kind of came to you. It's not like you were looking for it, like people started inviting you. And then eventually you created the Miami Life Center, which is a wonderful space here.
Tim and I created that together.
Right. And you mentioned you had a lot of trouble, actually.
For sure. This was not easy.
It was like months. You were going to India, you thought the constructors were going to take care of it.
So we had this arrangement, and Tim was really instrumental in building Miami Life Center, because I'm not really a pragmatic person nor a practical person. I would try to say that again. Maybe I'm pragmatic in circumstances, but I'm not practical in terms of changing light bulbs, right? I'm not such a good light bulb changer, and I'm not really spatially oriented, So like
really, you do the 4th series?
Well, I can orient my own space, but if you try to tell me, like how many electrical outlets should go in like an 8 by 10 room, I will sit there and think like 8 by 10. How many electrical outlets? I don't know. How many do you think? Whereas Tim, he'll sit there and he'll draw things out, and he'll say like, what about here and there, and how many lights, and the lights should point in this direction and that direction, and I'm like, wow, that looks great. Whatever you think, sign me up for it. So so he was really instrumental in sort of doing this whole the build out. So he was really key with that.
But the city gave you trouble.
The thing about Miami Beach is, and now I've learned, it was really the first time in my life where there was nothing that you could really do. You have all these hoops you have to jump through, and you just have to go through them, and it's not your pace, and it's the city's pace. And the city's going to put, they're going to send inspectors out, and then they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. And it's like,
so how long did it take from beginning to opening the doors?
We got our permits. We signed the lease on the 1st of January, and then we opened in September. So it took us 9 months.
07?
I'm not so good with years either, but I think 06, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out, because a lot of people, I get the impression, seem to think that teaching yoga is an easy thing. Right. And I just wanted to bring that up because I never thought of it. I thought that the Miami Life Center, where I practiced a couple of times, it materialized there. And there it was. Fantastic. And that it took so much to build it was new information for me.
Sure.
I had no idea.
Yeah, this space was completely empty. we were here when like I like order. I don't really like the process of chaos to create the order. So the space was empty in here, and I was here when they jackhammered the floors to run the plumbing lines to create the bathrooms, and that really freaked me out. It was extremely disturbing because I thought that they were just breaking everything, and Tim was excited because he likes this construction process. So really, I think that if it weren't for Tim, Miami Life Center wouldn't be what it is today.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, really, for sure. And that's true with our house and with so much of our lives, really, because I'm not really, I don't know, like I said, I'm an abstract and conceptual thinker, but it's hard for me to think about, again, the pragmatics and the practicals of light switches and electrical outlets and hammering things into the wall and this sort of thing. It's just really,
it's not for you.
It hurts my brain.
Right,
it just
not for you. So let me ask you, those beautiful videos that you've been making in YouTube, and you have these new ones where you talk about the life of yoga, yogi and what happens and how you notice people breathing. Very interesting. Is that in your house? We see a beautiful living room on the back.
Yeah, that is my house.
And Team helped you remodel that too.
Absolutely, for sure.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's wonderful. So now, going back to the Miami Life Center, it was after these opened, so you were a full-blown teacher by then. So you were doing your own practice and teaching and traveling. And your traveling schedule is heavy.
Yeah,
like I've seen it. You're all over the world. And then you got. As a surprise, in 2007, you went to say hello to Guruji and Sharath, and they surprised you, right?
Yeah. Well, the story in relation to the certification was actually on my, I think that it was on my 3rd trip to India when I got the authorization to teach. And this was something that was really kind of kooky because when I my 2nd trip to India, I felt really guilty because I had taught a few classes and I went to talk to Guruji and I said, Guruji, I've been teaching a few classes and I know you didn't give me the authorization. He smiled and he said, oh, for you teaching, okay, next trip authorization, no problem, you take. So next trip, he gave me the authorization, and when the authorization was being handed over to me, Sharath said to me, next year when you finish advanced, you take certification.
Wow.
And I thought,
tall order.
And I thought, you think I'm going to finish the advanced series next year? You're pretty crazy.
Just to put it in context, the 3rd series of Ashtanga Yoga has so many like arm balances and escape splits and things, contortions.
Pretty crazy.
It's like being an Olympic athlete to finish that.
For sure. And I never thought I'd finish it, and I never thought that I was worthy of the certification, so he freaked me out. And Tim and a friend of mine were there, and I remember turning to both of them after I got the authorization paper, and they were like, yay, you're gonna get certified. And I said, you both of you stop that right now. Do not repeat that. Do not say that to another person. You take this to the grave with you. I don't want this repeated. I don't want you to talk about it with me. If you don't want to talk about it with each other, I don't want to tell your mother. I don't want you to tell your grandmother. I don't want you to tell your dog. Like, don't repeat this, right?
Right.
I just didn't, and I didn't really want to accept it. And I remember you had to renew this authorization. So I would go and renew it, and Guruji and Sharath, they would get mad at me. Why you wait last day? Certification not possible one day. And I thought, oh, it's okay. Because I was uncomfortable with this whole thing.
That's very different than how it's seen from other people sort of coming into Ashtanga. People kind of want it or crave it, and you were like, no, not yet, not yet.
For sure. And that's pretty much how I felt about the 4th series too. I felt like, I was like, oh, there's something in me that felt, I don't know, I didn't feel worthy of it yet, and they were sort of yelling at me about it. But when we opened the Yoga Center, then I felt like, okay, like now we have the Yoga Center, like now it sort of makes sense. And so then on that trip, I sort of went with the authorization on the 1st day, and they were like, oh, fill out this paper and all this sort of stuff. And then Sharath and Guruji, they said that it would take some time before the paperwork was done. But then on my last day of practice, I was doing guided primary with Guruji, and after the practice we do pranam, or we wait to say thanks to Guruji, and I was about in the middle of the line, and when I was about to do pranam to Guruji, I was about to say thanks to him.
That is sort of bowing to him and saying
exactly.
Thank you,
he looked at me and he smiled and he said, your paper is ready. And then I said, oh, thank you, Guruji. He said, come, take it now. And I thought, okay. And I looked at the line, and then people started to look at me.
That's
like,
kind of weird,
yeah, like, why is she going into the office with him?
I can feel the jealousy.
Or even just like annoyed. Now they have to wait. I think what it was was more like, just wait. And if I would have known, I would have gone to the end of the line, and I would have let everyone go ahead of me. But then I went in, and then Guruji took the paper out, and he was like, oh, some stamps are missing. And I said, oh, I come back later. No, sitting there, I am doing. And so he took out, and I watched him do all of the stamps, and I watched him do all that, and I watched him sign it, and I watched him sort of do everything that needs to be done. Then he handed it to me, which was really sweet, because really I didn't expect it. It was a surprise.
That's nice. And I think it gives you a whole new level also of, for people to know, having the certification, it gives them a sense of solidity that the teacher has, in fact, practiced for a very long period of time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you've been to Mysore about 14 times now, something like that, like an enormous amount of years. Have you ever taken anything other than asana? Have you ever learned, say, pranayama or meditation?
I was in a few pranayama classes with Guruji, and they were, you know, even in just those few classes, I really feel that I was able to learn a lot. You know, every moment that I spent with Guruji, I felt was a valuable lesson contained in each of those moments.
Right.
I've also spent some time studying the Yoga Sutras with Dr. Nagaraj Rao and Jayashree and Narasimhan, who are also some chanting and philosophy teachers. They're
like celebrities in Mysore, yes, and they have some CDs that you can chant to.
They're amazing.
So I have a personal question.
Okay, for sure.
So here it comes. Reading Ashtanga Yoga, the primary series, your first book with Shambhala, which is beautiful, by the way, beautiful photos, black and white. You talk about gender stereotype, and something that happens a lot, which is people say, you know, women can be very flexible. Men will then have it easy when they have to lift their weight. And so my question is, I'm 46. I do what everybody does, or most people, like, you know, all of primary comes okay and a little of intermediate, but I am 46.
Right.
And so is this I am 46 just a thing in my mind? Because you've seen, even though you're much younger than me, you've seen thousands of bodies.
True.
So do you think, for me as a female at this age, is it possible to learn the arm balances to get that strong?
So strength, I think, no problem, for sure, 100%, you know. I don't really see that as the obstacle. I mean, I feel like strength is something that you can, that's even, especially for women, strength in particular is something that's healthy and really should be worked on. Continuing as long as you know, physical movement is recommended.
So you don't stop someone, say, depending on age. You just look at each individual case.
Each individual case is what's really important. But as the student gets older, I think you have to evaluate a couple of different things. For example, you know, you teach someone, there's so many different factors for each individual person, right? But generally, if you want to make generalizations, age-related generalizations.
Right, and someone who's relatively healthy.
Right, so you take a relatively healthy 20-year-old person. They're going to recover so much quicker, and they also have less injuries already. So you're going to be able to push them sort of harder and faster, right?
Right.
That being said, there's also 20-year-olds that have anxiety, 20-year-olds that have brittle joints, or have, you know, their body is weak in some capacity, so you can't push them too hard. Then you have someone, say, who's older. Say someone who's 50 years old and maybe they've never done yoga before, but they've lived a really healthy life and they're really physically fit, and their muscle tissues are, they have a lot of liquidity in them. Their joints are very healthy. There's not a lot of pre-existing injuries. You can really, you know, see them progress in the practice. Generally, I recommend, regardless of what age, at some moment it's really useful, like when you get a new posture or a new movement, to really pause and let that integrate rather than try to move on too fast too soon.
I see.
That, I think, is real important regardless of what age you are.
So don't rush.
Don't rush.
Feel it, like stay with it.
Stay and pause. And that can be as little as, say, 2 weeks in one posture, or up to 2 years in one posture, or even 10 years in one posture, just to figure out where you're going to find your sense of stability in it.
Right.
And in relation to sort of gender, questions about gender, I think that yoga changes the subjective experience of the physical body. And so what I mean by that is it changes how we be in our bodies, it changes how we feel. So traditional gender identity is based so much in how we inhabit the space of our body, and we take that on from our cultural conditioning. So when we do our practice, we feel our bodies in a way that is outside the bounds of conventional gender stereotypes. So again, it changes the subjective experience of our gender by changing the way we inhabit the inner spaces of our body.
That's very interesting. It's almost like you go back to the drawing board through a daily practice.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
Eventually it's not even female or male.
Exactly.
It's just a, sort of a mass of bones and joints and
exactly. So there's, rather than saying, you know, the guys are always going to be strong and then the girls are going to be flexible, I think there are people who have a proclivity towards flexibility, whether they're male or female or some other gender. And then there are people who have a proclivity towards strength, again, whether they're male, you know, traditional, heterosexual, male, female, or LGBTQIA, whatever it is, then you're going to find this neutral point where the strength becomes flexibility and the flexibility becomes strength. And we're kind of asked to create that harmony between these two opposing forces that are capable within each person.
That's very interesting. I'm definitely going to take that in, and like I feel seriously encouraged now. I'm so glad you said that. Now you've dealt with, you know, you have a business. Can you actually make money from teaching yoga? Do you make a living from yoga?
Yeah, I think it's possible. It's definitely possible to make a living from teaching yoga. I think that just as in anything else, you have to come up with a business plan and figure out, sort of put in the work behind the scenes to understand, well, where's sustainable revenue going to come in, and where does that meet with my lifestyle and my values?
Right.
So to really sort of do the behind the scenes work about that, I think is really important. To put in your due diligence rather than to just to think in an abstract way, and to sort of bring it down into reality and say, okay, well, if I'm teaching, you know, this many classes per week, and what can I expect to bring in from that, and is that going to sustain my life? And if not, are there other ways that I can teach or that I can share the message of yoga that are going to be sustainable? Like some people like to do a lot of private lessons. We have a lot of teachers here that do a lot of private lessons because they feel that they like to teach privately, and it also creates the possibility of making more economic sustainability.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I find there is quite a bit of misunderstanding in what it means to be a yoga teacher. A lot of I received an email recently. I like Ashtanga. I want to be a teacher. Right. I just started, and I mean, for me, just to put into words what has to happen for a primary serious class to happen is an enormous amount of energy. It's just, and that's just one class.
Yeah,
not to mention traveling, opening a studio, dealing with the city. So I think it's good to bring it back to reality, which I think you do this very well.
For sure.
And you also use every medium. You are in YouTube, you're in, and that brought you a lot of hatred, which I never understood, because I think anyone who can see the amount of work that you've put into this since your very early days, what is there to hate? How do you deal with it? How do you deal with that? Because it's intense. Like I've seen it.
It's kind of funny, you know. There was a period. I don't know. It kind of comes and goes. You know, there was a period where there were a lot of blogs about people who are really, they were obsessed with that. I was wearing shorts, so their number one mission was, let's try to make Kino wear leggings. You know, and I thought, okay. You want me to wear leggings? Okay, it's not against wearing leggings. It's
I just want to mention it's December 28th and it's like almost 100 degrees here, just for a record. So
that's what, you know, come to Miami in the August when it's super hot, and then see if you want to wear leggings, you know.
Right.
And then so for me it was just kind of anytime, sort of a policy that I have with any negative feedback. Negative feedback never feels good to hear. You know, you don't like it. Nobody likes it. It's not like, there's a few people addicted to pain that are like, beat me down. But the average person that don't like to hear negative feedback. I don't like to hear negative feedback. Someone tells you like, ooh, your shirt has a hole. You're like, ew, you know, you tell me that. Well, thanks, you know. So I create a policy in myself. This is what I do. Whenever there's negative feedback, I pause. I don't fight back against it, because this is really important, because if you fight back against it, you might not be able to grow from it. So I pause. I evaluate it. I try to remain equanimous, and I evaluate and I see, do they have a point? Do they not have a point? Is what I'm doing out of my integrity? Is what I'm doing out of my authenticity? Or is it just me? And if it's just me, then I say, well, thank you for bringing that up. You know, at some moment, maybe you'll have a point, but right now I've really thought about it, and I'm still gonna wear what I want to wear. Or sometimes people have brought up a point, and then I think about it. Oh, well, you do have a point. Well, I'll use that as constructive feedback and do better the next time.
Right.
So I really welcome
That's a very healthy
feedback.
way to look at it. And also I think one thing that you can see when looking at your life, what you've created here, is that you definitely have a passion for this. It's like beyond clear. So when you really want to do something who's going to stop you? And why? And you have this passion for sharing what is done for you with others, which I find, so I'm very glad that you've never got discouraged and that you kept going, and that you find ways to teach beginners, ways that are outside of the Ashtanga way as well. And that's great. I find that really interesting.
In the Ashtanga world, I feel it's actually mostly the people who are having some criticism of me are mostly within the Ashtanga world.
There's an Ashtanga police, unfortunately.
It's something like that. I'm definitely a criminal in the Ashtanga police department. There's a warrant out for my arrest. It has been for a while.
But you know what? God bless the Ashtanga police, and you keep doing your work. Exactly. I know I've benefited, and I dare anyone who's in the Ashtanga police to say they've never seen one of your videos to understand something about a posture. And I mean, you have 2-minute videos about pretty much every posture out there with anatomical descriptions. You have another student demonstrating so we can see it in different bodies. There's like a full library on your YouTube. So, love to the haters, and let Kino continue doing. Now, let me ask you one question. I'm going to go, I'm conscious of the time. I'm going to go deep on you.
Okay.
So, throughout your whole life, yoga found you and you've been on this amazing path. What would you say is one thing that took you a long time to understand?
The thing that I would say that took me the longest time to understand is my relationship with God. I think that's one of the things that I didn't really understand from the beginning. And I remember reading Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and getting to the Ishvara Sutras and thinking like, what is all this? And not really understanding. But Guruji would always talk about God. Guruji would say, you do your practice, you think about God. You inhale, you think of God. Exhale, you also think of God. You go in your life, always think of God. And I was thinking, God, what is that? Literally, like, God, what is that? Who are you? Where are you? And what is that? And I think that I have so much of a resistance to that because of conventional religion. And I was never raised with any religion, so I'm sort of unchurched in the Christian sense, And my grandfather was a Buddhist, and my dad's a sort of a Protestant, and my mom went to Catholic school. So, they raised me with no religion because they didn't believe in enforcing religious beliefs on me, and I had a strong resistance to the patriarchal assumptions of contemporary religion. We already know that from previously in this discussion, right? So for me, when I came into yoga, the Guruji talked about God. I thought, well, what is that, and where do I find it? And I would have these sort of these moments of timelessness, these moments, these sort of epiphany moments in the practice where their past, present, and future were sort of merged into a sort of timeless experience and a misty experience, you could say. And I realized after a long time that these were the experiences. These experiences were the divine, sort of reaching to speak to me in the cracks of my consciousness.
That's very interesting.
And it took me a really long time to sort of understand that, that God is within each of us, including myself, and that the reason that the practice works is because it gives us kind of a radio channel into divinity. It gives us a direct experience of God.
I love that.
Yeah, and
like
it took me a long time to really sort of accept and understand that. And here's the magical thing about Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, right? In relation to their understanding and presentation of the divine, is that the yoga is traditionally presented as a path of effort. So we practice, and through the practice we cultivate the fire of purification, removing obstacles and impurities along this path. And if you didn't finish this lifetime, you get to press restart and you try again. And so you get again. So the game of life can be perpetually restarted until you do it right. Now, Patanjali says, hey, that's cool. These are all the obstacles, and this is what you're going to do for them. And these are the countless incarnations it's going to take you to get there. And if you're real lucky, one day after thousands and thousands of lifetimes, like the Buddha, maybe you'll be clear of all your samskaras, all of those
preconditionings and
exactly all the preconditionings that sort of mar the clarity of our mind. Now, Patanjali presents this other option, Ishvara Pranidanadva, right? Or through surrender and devotion to God, we can attain that peace right now. Patanjali says that in the presence of Ishvara, if we understand the presence of God, in the presence of God, all our obstacles are removed. All the samskaras are gone. So I thought for a long time, in this concept, what does surrender to God mean? I thought that for such a long time. What does that mean? I didn't get it, you know? Because people, they're going to sing, you know, kirtan and then devotion to God. I would look at that and I would say, I don't really see how this is devotion to God. You're liking singing and you're in a zone and that's awesome, but good for you, but I don't see how this is devotion to God. And then some people, they would make offerings, you know, or do a ritual. And you're doing a ritual. This looks like the Vatican. I don't really know if this is God. I don't know, maybe God lives in the Vatican. For me, I was just like, I don't really understand how you do devotion to God. And then one day, I got it from my own sense. Surrender to God means, you know, the Christian sense, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. You surrender your will to God's will. And this is devotion to God. This is devotion to divinity, which is the humble acceptance that you are not the master and creator of your life. You're not the master and creator of the universe. You have a mission, maybe a divine mission that's sort of been assigned to you, could say, but that you don't have the control. Who has the control? God has the control. So you surrender your will into the divine will, and through that you are devoted to God. You are a devotee, right?
You still do your work, but you surrender whatever comes and whatever
absolutely happens. And you understand that, you know, what you want, and you know, you surrender your wants and your desires, and instead of forcing the world, you listen more. And you listen for that spark within you to speak to you, and you listen for that quiet voice in your heart to guide the path of your life. And in this way, I think that the yoga is a path of redemption. And it's a path of being able to be whole once more. Because when we understand that we are not the driver, but we follow, you know, we follow the path that's been revealed before us, then we can understand who we really are. We can understand that we are not of the ego. We are beings of spirit. And once we can identify with that, then I think that all of our life begins to make so much more sense.
That's beautiful. I love that. So, Kino, where can people find you?
People can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Kino Yoga on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, also on Kino Yoga, on my website, kinoyoga.com, where my schedule
and that's
is.
all your schedule?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
so
wonderful.
If I'm visiting a city near you, it will be listed there.
Right, or here at the Miami Life Center, which is a wonderful...
And here too, yeah. I'm also online. I have always some new online classes that are coming out. I just have a series, it's a few different series of classes on the Cody app, so those can be downloaded and watched on your mobile device.
Cody, how do you spell Cody?
C-O-D-Y.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know. Okay.
Yeah. And I actually have a primary series course on the Cody app that goes point by point through the whole primary series, and then it's a flow practice. And I just released a 21-day course on strength, which is all of the techniques to build strength. So maybe good for you if you want to do the arm balances.
Check that one out. Yes, and for anyone who listens who is not into yoga and you're interested, Kino has a fantastic DVD for beginners, for Ashtanga Yoga, which goes on only until the middle of the primary series.
And I have a new one out, just also called just Beginners Ashtanga, which is even more basic.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, I didn't see that one yet. Okay. And you also have, and this is for anyone who's listening who may be interested, you have a second book coming out, the Intermediate Series, A Practice to Open Your Heart and Purify Your Body and Mind.
Right. Yeah.
And this one comes in June from Shambhala Publications, right?
Yeah.
So we'll be looking forward to that. We'll link to that so that people can read that as well as the other two that you have.
Super.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay.
That's all for the Yoga Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in iTunes and visit theyogapodcast.com for more interviews. Until next time, keep it real.